Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Spectral MD Holdings Limited General Meeting. Throughout this recorded meeting, investors online will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged. They can be submitted at any time using the Q&A tab just situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Simply type in your question at any time and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question received during the meeting itself, but the company can review all questions submitted today and will publish any responses on the Investor Meet Company platform. I'd now like to hand over to Wensheng Fan, CEO. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Mark. Good morning. I'm Wensheng Fan, Chief Executive Officer of Spectral MD Holdings Limited and Chairman of this general meeting. And it is my pleasure to welcome all of you to this general meeting of stockholders. It is now 9 a.m. Central Daytime, and the meeting will please come to order. Before we begin with the formal business of today's meeting, please note that, as described in the company's proxy statement, the holder of proxies solicited by the Board of Directors for this meeting is Vince Capone, our General Counsel and Corporate Secretary. I wish to express my sincere thanks to the shareholders who mailed their proxies, as well as to those of you who are here today for your interest in the affairs of our company. I would now like to ask Vince Capone to report with regard to the calling and the giving of the notice of this meeting.
This general meeting was called by our Board of Directors. In addition, the Board of Directors have fixed August 4th, 2023 as the record date for the holders of our common stock entitled to receive notice of and to vote at this general meeting. The notice general meeting and the related proxy solicitation materials, including a proxy statement describing the matters to be voted on at this meeting and a proxy card, were mailed on or about August 17th, 2023 to all holders of our common stock of record as of the close of business on the record date. I have an affidavit with respect to this mailing. Accordingly, this general meeting was duly called and notice of this general meeting was properly given to our shareholders in accordance with the provisions of our bylaws and applicable law. This affidavit is available to any shareholder who wishes to examine it and will be filed with the minutes of this meeting. The proxy statement and the form of proxy card will also be filed.
And now Vince Capone will now report on the stockholders entitled to vote, please.
The Link Group, our transfer agent, has prepared a complete list of the holders of record of our common stock entitled to vote at this meeting. The list includes the names of the stockholders arranged in alphabetical order and the number of shares held by each. A complete list of the stockholders entitled to vote at this meeting is available for inspection upon request by any stockholder.
Vince Capone will file the list of stockholders entitled to vote with the records of this meeting. The Board of Directors has appointed Vince Capone to act as the Inspector of Election and of stockholders' votes at this meeting. Vince Capone has signed the oath of Inspector of Election and of stockholders' votes. The Secretary will file the oath with the records of this general meeting. Vince Capone will now report on the number of shares of common stock represented at this general meeting by proxies received by the company prior to the meeting.
As the Inspector of Elections, the number of shares is 136,626,514 issued and outstanding shares of the company as of the record date, August 4th, 2023. Under Delaware corporate law and our bylaws, to constitute a quorum, a majority of shares, or 68,313,257 shares of the issued and outstanding shares must be represented at this meeting, either in person or by proxy. The number of shares represented at this meeting or by proxy is at least a majority of the outstanding shares of common stock. Therefore, a quorum is present and the meeting has been properly convened.
As you can see in the rules of conduct, we will adhere to certain procedures in fairness to all stockholders in attendance and to assure an orderly and constructive meeting. Anyone not following these rules of conduct may be asked to leave the meeting. The rules specifically do not permit any recording devices to be used during the meeting. We will follow the order of business described in the agenda. We will hold a general question and answer session at the conclusion of the meeting. Please hold your questions until that time unless you're a stockholder or duly appointed representative of a stockholder, and your question relates to the specific agenda item under discussion. We will now proceed with the voting on the proposed matters described in the proxy statement to be acted upon at this meeting. We will hold voting until all proposals are on the floor. The first order of business for us today is the approval of Proposal 1 set forth in our proxy statement, the approval of the amendment to the company's certificate of incorporation. The company wishes to amend Article 4C3 of its certificate of incorporation regarding the cancellation of the company's admission to trading on AIM in order to conform with the Rule 41 of the AIM rules. The proposed amendment would require the approval of stockholders holding not less than 75% of votes cast by stockholders at the general meeting. Will Vince Capone please read the Board of Directors' recommendation with respect to Proposal 1?
The Board of Directors unanimously recommends the approval of the amendment to the company's certificate of incorporation.
Before proceeding to voting, are there any questions from stockholders regarding Proposal number 1? The second matter on our agenda today is the approval of Proposal 2 set forth in our proxy statement to approve the voluntary cancellation of the company's admission to trading on AIM of the company's common stock upon completion of the company's business combination. Will Vince Capone please read the Board of Directors' recommendation with respect to Proposal 2?
The Board of Directors unanimously recommends the approval of the voluntary cancellation of the company's admission to trading on AIM.
Before proceeding to voting, are there any questions from stockholders regarding Proposal number 2? We can now proceed with the voting on each of the proposals. I hereby declare the polls open for voting. Are there any stockholders present who have not turned in proxies and wish to vote in person at this meeting? If so, please raise a hand so ballots can be distributed to you. It's not necessary to vote in person if you have delivered a proxy, unless you wish to change your vote. All stockholders present and desiring to do so having voted, I hereby declare the voting closed and request that all completed ballots should now be delivered to the Inspector of Election. We will now return to the formal order of business of the meeting concerning the proposals presented to this meeting. I have the preliminary report of the Inspector of Election. On the basis of voting with respect to Proposal 1, based on the receipt of the sufficient 4 votes, which constitute a majority of shares voted in person or by proxy by stockholders entitled to vote at the general meeting, the amendment to the company's certificate of incorporation has been approved by our stockholders. with respect to Proposal 2, based on the receipt of a sufficient for vote, which constitutes 75% of the votes cast by stockholders in person or by proxy at the general meeting, the voluntary cancellation of the company's admission to AIM has been approved by our stockholders. The report of the Inspector of Election with respect to each of the proposals voted upon at this general meeting of stockholders will be filed in the minute book of the company. I'd now like to conclude a formal business portion of the meeting before opening up the floor for questions. Because there's no other formal business to come before the meeting, I, as a holder of the proxy solicited by the board, move that the meeting be adjourned. Will Vince Capone and all others in favor of this motion please raise your hand or verbally indicate your assent? I note that the management proxy holder, Vince Capone, has voted in favor of this motion. I declare the motion adopted. I now declare this general meeting adjourned and closed. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attendance this morning. I would now like to open up the floor for questions. If you have a question, please stand up, online input, and identify yourself when recognized for the rules of conduct distributed to all attendees of this meeting. I think that will conclude all the for this meeting. Thank you very much, and I will hand this back to the operator of the platform.
That's great. Thank you to the board of Spectral MD. Ladies and gentlemen, could I please ask you not to close this session, as we'll now automatically redirect you for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order the company can better understand your views and expectations. This may take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team and the board of Spectral MD Holdings Limited, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation. Good afternoon to you all.